Mike Tyson, Jake Paul officially rescheduled. Or, at least officially, a date has been announced that it's going to be rescheduled. So, I'm trying to break this thing down, guys, because I've never fully got it. And I have reason to believe three different things. Like, there's three different things that I believe could be true, but I have reason to believe each of the three. Let me just give you a great example. July 20th is when this was scheduled, Paul versus Tyson. And there was even an undercard fight that had caught my attention. Darren Till. And he was going to fight that Chavez Jr., who Anderson had boxed and beaten. I don't know if that was a co-main event, but it was for me. It was the one that I was second most interested in. No disrespect to Amanda Serrano. I just remembering that you were on the card. You, of course, were my co-main. So let's take a look at this, because when that whole thing got canceled and Tyson got scratched, Jake Paul himself went publicly to pick a fight with KSI for that date. In fact, Paul even said, I will fight KSI on that date of July 20th on Netflix debut on top of the card, the very card that Amanda's on, the very card of Darren versus Chavez Jr. And then in November, I will take on Mike Tyson as scheduled. So what that told me is the card was not yet canceled. The fight of Paul Tyson had been, they kicked the can on that. But the card itself, what Darren Till is getting ready for each day, that is still going to happen. And that was a very tough one to accept. Like, wow, the show must go on. I mean, if you lose a main event, right, it's one of those things. If you lose a main event and that is going to sink your company, if we're all to be real fair with one another, when you look the man in the mirror, you got to realize I didn't have much of a company. And this is a little bit different for a premiere on a major network like this. A stadium that seats 80,000 people. Like, who goes on top of that bill really does matter. It was a risk when it was Paul versus Tyson. So with somebody else of less interest, I mean, do you see where this one is a little bit different? But it was still confusing because Paul himself was trying to preserve this. So they've kicked the can, they moved the date. And when you move the date, as opposed to keeping July 20th, doing something July 20th, and then also, right? I mean, if Paul goes out there and fights somebody, then July 20th just turns into a great big marketing piece for Paul versus Tyson. Like, there's a way to preserve this and have it all protected. But when you switch them, when you cancel the date off the board and then you put it over here, it's a very different feel with a very different strategy. That's what I'm sharing for you. And now it becomes a very different prediction. What would be different November 15th? Like, what would be better? What about it would be better on November 15th? And feel free to answer the question. Many of you have online. I've read what you say in the comment section. Tyson will have longer to train. Okay, great. So that would be better. So we're now admitting Tyson would not have been ready in July. If he can wait until November, he will now be ready. He will now have more time. Is that what you're saying? And then all of a sudden you go, well, no, not exactly. Okay, great. You're confident leading into November that the picture and the subsequent videos that we know exist are in the possession of TMZ, but have not yet been released, of Mike Tyson being wheeled off the airplane. You believe that can all die down and that story can be told different by then. And what about this lesson are we going to learn so it doesn't happen again in November? By example, just having a backup fighter. Be as simple as that. That would be a lesson that we learned. Was that lesson learned, and who was that backup fighter? And when do we get to talk about it? What do we like the backup idea more? That's happened. Many times that's happened. Dana has found himself on short notice in a match he was not planning and did not build that then does better than the projections for the original. I'll give you a great example. Conor McGregor versus Chad Mendes. And you know what? Conor versus Jose, that was so red hot and that was so wonderful. So there was something about that timing of bringing Mendes in, who was the exact opposite style, was not a striker like Jose. He was a wrestler. Like, there was something about that. I remember when that happened. I remember being so interested, going, wow, what a great change. So it is times where these happen. I'm just looking at the Paul versus Tyson. And if we're just to guess, is it going to happen? right? Because a lot of that also comes down to, do the people that are planning this sincerely believe it's going to happen? I think the sincerity is there. That's the relevance of canceling the date and moving it over here. The relevance is the sincerity that you believe you can, in fact, pull it off. If you thought you were going to have a problem, PR or otherwise, you just want it extended. I don't think, it's my guess, I don't think that Paul knows. I think that Paul was genuinely trying to save the card. I think he wanted to fight KSI. I think he had the attention. I think he saw how one could lead to the other. Instead of canceling and or moving a competition / payday, you could just add one to it. That's what I think. Tyson, been a little quiet, but that's not abnormal. It caught us all by surprise. Tyson was so quiet, this rumor never even got out. When the fight was happening, put out some good training video, but he was always quiet. We're like, everything kind of seems normal. It kind of seems as it is here. So if we're just trying to guess and predict and project, what would you guess, predict, and project? At a minimum, a backup fighter, I believe, a minimum. I mean, this was tested to some degree. Tommy Fury versus Jake Paul, they're scheduled for New York and Madison Square Garden. That falls through, got a refund over $1 million in tickets. They end up getting the fight. But now when they actually got the fight the second time, they had a backup fighter. This isn't a novel idea that I'm coming with. But Ryan Garcia had offered to fight Jake Paul on July 20th. I've never seen Jake Paul back down. I'm not suggesting he did here, but I didn't hear him respond to Ryan Garcia. Why didn't I hear that? Did I just miss it? Did he not like the idea? Did he not know you guys liked it? Because you did like it. We all liked it a lot. Ryan Garcia versus Paul, July 20th. Do what you want with Tyson. Do a contract, don't do a contract. You don't have to tell him. Whatever, that's between y'all. My name is Paul. Go get them in there. And not only did we not go get them in there, we lost the date in its entirety. And not only that, don't remember hearing a response from the problem child. So, as we get closer to November 15th, I got messages on my phone today from a reliable source telling me Lennox Lewis has been contacted and telling me both Klitschko brothers have been contacted to see if they would fight Jake Paul. And I'm very light on that. I don't believe that to be true with any part of my being. I don't believe that you, the audience, would like to see Jake Paul versus Lennox Lewis or one of the Klitschko brothers. I could be wrong. But this is the situation we're in. And if we only have one guess, I haven't seen Darren Till say he stopped training for July 20th. Darren's very active, very busy. I haven't read where Amanda said that World Championship match and it isn't happening. So I'm a little confused for July 20th. I understand that Paul versus Tyson has been moved. I just don't know if the July 20th date is dead and released. And this may be obvious information to you guys. I'm not here to tell you something. I'm here to ask you something. I read all the comments. Let me know. Leave a comment below.